Okay, every time we bring on this next guest, I always feel like my resume is a little shoddy. I mean, he's a former FBI agent, a former Navy SEAL, and an Air Marshal. He's our good friend, Jonathan Gilliam. Jonathan, good to have you on.
Good to be with you. Hey, listen, our resumes are very good, but the biggest thing about all of our resumes is that we're never wrong. We're always right. I think that's the most important part of it.
I like that. I like that. It's a great honor to have you on. I want to start with something that I think a lot of people probably aren't thinking about. We're watching the war. We're praying for the people in Israel. We know there's a pretty intense war going on. Israel's starting to get the upper hand. But on our soil, the professional terrorists that have never really struck our soil very often, Hezbollah, they've had sleeper cells here. If you're the FBI, walk us through right now what you're probably doing and looking at to make sure that Iran doesn't try to surprise us on our own homeland.
Well, I don't know if they're doing this, but the first thing I would be doing is looking at these individuals who are at all these riots and all these protests, the stuff that's going on in the universities, and the people who are closely related to Hamas, because they're all over the place overtly. And they've convinced a lot of people to do their bidding when it comes to down talking the Israelis and Israel in general, attacking Jews, as we've seen here in the United States. And that's a very important thing, because if terrorism has evolved, it's not just simply about big attacks and causing fear in a society to get them to do what they want. But now they have mastered the art of using social media and these protests and riots to push out altruism for all these narcissists that have come out on the left and on the right as well. But people everywhere that because of social media, they think they know more than everybody else, and there's not a cause they won't pass up. So my fear is not just that there's sleeper cells in and around, but that they are inspiring many of these Americans that are not Muslim to go out and do these things. So the FBI is notoriously bad at thinking outside the box. If you ever watched the show Mindhunter and how they gave that guy so much abuse because of his out of the box thinking, that's really the way it is. And so the FBI needs to learn how to think outside the box and not just think regular. Yes, there's cells here. They've been allowed to come into the country. But if you're just looking for overt or covert Islamic terrorists, you may miss this whole other aspect of what they've shown that they're doing, not just here, but also in and around Israel. Greta Thunberg jumped on and went all the way across an ocean to get over there in support of Hamas. All that you see is exactly what I fear happening here. So they got to concentrate on that as well.
Yeah, that's good advice. Very good advice.
Yeah, Jonathan, there are a number of organizations, Campus Reform is one of them, who publishes a list of universities and the dollars that they accept from organizations with very questionable ties to terrorism. So there's a provable tie between education and terrorism. With this pressure to revoke the visas of international students who are involved in these protests, does that help the effort? Does that make any dent in rooting out these sleeper cells?
I absolutely believe it does, because I was in an article recently on Fox quoted about saying that these visa overstays, for instance, are a national security threat. The guy that was in Colorado that threw Molotov cocktails and burnt eight or more people, that individual was a visa overstay. So the possibility of these sleeper cells being here because of immigration, for instance, shows you how important it is for all these agencies within the federal government and all the aspects in which they have to look at this problem to work together and hit it from different angles. I was listening to your last guest and the colonel and talking about Israel and Iran, and if you look at Israel, the way they have done this, they have systematically gone after and diminished Hamas. They went and diminished Hezbollah. Now they're going after Iraq, and with our assistance, they also diminished the Houthis. Right. But before that occurred, intelligence had to improve, and Israel definitely knows now how important the intelligence is. And I think that is another aspect of this that the federal government, along with or excuse me, the FBI, along with ICE and Homeland Security and all these agencies, they have lists of a lot of these people who have come over and then disappeared. They need to start working together to develop these potential attack cells and where those people came from. They can start forward thinking that. Doesn't mean you got to go out and charge these people, but there's nothing in the law that says you can at least start looking at names and saying this could possibly be something, and then start going and trying to make contact with those people.
9/11 reminded the world and educated Americans about the radical Islamist terrorism threat. It seems to me, Tay, one of the things you're warning about is sort of this radical far left threat potentially evolving into terrorism or lone wolf opportunities. Have we done enough thinking about that? And do you see an FBI in its transition to Kash Patel that's starting to focus on it?
That is a difficult thing, but and I'll tell you why, because the left owns the federal government. You know, President Trump may be in office and the Republicans may hold the majority, but the reality is all the people who run these agencies are, many of them are still leftists. And that's the problem, is that Kash Patel and the rest of these agency leaders have jumped in and started running their agencies. They didn't jump in and pause and get rid of these people effectively. Some of them were transferred to other offices, but overall, they're still the senior executive service that runs our federal government. That is a problem, because when you look at who the left typically, who they identify with, I guess you could say, is the communist or the socialist. And when you look at historically, and I like to not use the word radical, I use the word fundamental Islam. So when you look at the fundamental Islam and you look at historically communism and socialism, you get what's called the Red-Green Alliance. And so wherever we see the left historically, we see is the potential for Islam to maneuver and to gain support. And I think this is something that the government should be looking at, because embedded in the left, like I was talking about with these riots and protests and things that are going on at schools, are numerous people that are wearing the Hamas headgear. Yeah. They're chanting the same types of stuff that they chant over in Hamas. Like, so we see that the leftists are incorporating these individuals, these tactics that they use over there, that they use in the first and second Intifada. Yep. They're actually doing that here. They just are now getting to a more violent aspect, which they had in the second Intifada in Israel. They're getting to that now on a much faster scale than they did over there. It took years for them to progress that way over in Israel. Here, they're progressing within months.
Yeah, a very dangerous and very troubling fusion. Jonathan, thank you for bringing that all to our attention. You're right on the money on that. Jonathan Gilliam, former FBI agent, former Navy SEAL, and Air Marshal. Good to have you on, my friend. Thanks for joining us.
You got it. Anytime, you guys.
Yeah, well, we love that. That's awesome.